while you're turning there, I'd like to just help you to understand what we're looking at. When I was a child, I had the privilege to take a family vacation with my mom and my dad and my sister to Disney World. It was very much a privilege in my childhood. When we went down there to Disney World, I had some good memories. The most vivid memory I have of Disney World was a place called Epcot Center. Anybody that's ever been there knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's the place that's got the big, giant golf ball. You know, everybody says it's actually not a golf ball. I think it's called a geosphere. It's got all this scientific stuff in it. It's a really crazy place. And Epcot Center, I think, was put there for the adults. But as a child, I wasn't. And this is why I liked it. I've always been intrigued by different cultures. And there's a portion of Epcot Center that was, they had all of these different countries represented around this gigantic lake. You can see each country from each shore. And I can remember this even since I was in, this is probably 4th grade. And I can remember getting on this little ferry, and you would be like in the Germany country, and you'd get on the ferry and you'd go over to Italy, and then you'd get on the ferry and then you'd go over to China. And in each one of these different countries, they would have a replica of something that those countries were famous for. Like in China, they had this Chinese architecture everywhere. In Italy, they had in France, France. That's where the Eiffel Tower is. In France, there's a replica of that. And I can remember this kind of stuff when I was in 4th grade, and all the different foods and smells. It was like walking into a different country. This is kind of what we're seeing here with this text. We're going to talk about a very, very popular passage where Jesus cast demons out of this man. And it was the legion of demons. That's the story we're looking at. To understand what Jesus is walking into as a Jew, though, and his disciples walking into as a Jew, that really adds some significance to this story. Because here they are on the Sea of Galilee, which anybody that's studied the Bible a little bit knows that the Sea of Galilee is where Jesus has done a great portion of his ministry. On one side of this Sea of Galilee, which is found in Jesus' home country of Israel, there is on the other side of the Sea of Galilee a totally different culture taking place. You could get on a boat and go across this sea, and you're literally in Gentile land. I'm talking like you go from synagogues to pagan worship centers. We're talking about specifically this place that Jesus shows up at and heals this man of these demons as part of the Decapolis part of the country. And in the specific place that he is landing his boat is a temple for Zeus, a temple for Artemis, a hippodrome where people done, their sporting activities and all of these things. And it is a very pagan culture, complete with Roman columns going down the road and amphitheaters and all of it. It just had it's like walking into a little Greece almost. And so, in these two entirely different cultures, walking out of the conservative culture of Judaism, just before this is the famous story where Jesus calms the storm. The disciples wake him up from sleep and the storm's about to turn their boat over. He said that you have little faith, and the winds and waves stop and land on the beach. And they land on the beach in all of God's sovereignty, I believe, in a country in which they might not have expected to land in as Jewish people. Here's a pig farm. Here's some people living in the tombs, basically in graveyards. Here's these pagan temples and stuff, and here Jesus is supposed to be the Jewish Messiah. What are we doing here? But this one character in this little place called the Gerasenes here, this one character, this demoniac that Jesus encounters amongst all the polytheism, the pig farming, and the temple prostitutes of this place. This one character speaks so much, I believe, to what we're looking at and facing in our own culture today. What I'm setting, what Holy Spirit set on my heart to do today is to hopefully give us some gracious understanding about a couple of things. And so I'm going to read our text, and we're going to get right into this. In Luke chapter 8, we're going to begin in verse 26. Then they sailed to the country of the Gadarenes, which is opposite Galilee. And when he stepped out on the land, there met him a certain man from the city who had demons for a long time. And he wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and with a loud voice, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for it had often seized him. And he was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles. And he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, saying, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. Now a herd of many swine was feeding there on the mountain. So they begged him that he would permit them to enter them. And he permitted them. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the lake and drowned. When those who fed them saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what had happened, and came to Jesus, and found the man from whom the demons had departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind. They were afraid. They also, who had seen it, told them by what means he who had been demon-possessed was healed. Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. And he got into the boat and returned. Jesus, this is your word, and I'm thankful to be able to preach it. I just want to ask and pray, Lord, that my words are your words. Speak through me by the power of your Holy Spirit. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Whenever we see somebody, whenever we encounter somebody, that saying that you're not supposed to judge people, you know how possible that is? We make judgments every day. We make judgments every day in our mind. Some of them are righteous and some of them may be unrighteous. But they're judgments nonetheless. And most often, when we see somebody in distress, when we see somebody in darkness, what we see is what's going on the outside. That's really all the evidence we have. Now that's sufficient evidence, Jesus said. He said, "You will know them by their fruit." That's sufficient evidence that somebody is in darkness if their life is surrounded in darkness. I don't dispute that. Our Lord said that. But I would challenge us as Christians to try to get underneath the surface and see what the cause for that darkness is. See, it's easy to make a snap judgment. And I hear it all the time with some of the folks that I call it our extended church family. The people that never attend our church, but our church ministers to on a weekly basis. And it's very easy, as I experienced the other night, one of their neighbors walking up to us, basically saying in so many words, "Why do you waste your time with these people? They put themselves in this mess." Well, I would hope that me, like every Christian that is surrendered to the Lord, can see something more than what we see on the outside. That when we look upon a person, we see the very image of God. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I want us to see this man as if just exactly how his culture had seen him. Here is a man who had been shackled by his culture. They did not know what to do with him. It's said within the Word, and there's a greater story that's going on here. It's covered in 3 separate Gospels. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke talks about this. And what we're attempting to do here is to compile the whole story and see how this all fits together. The best of it, I think, is in Luke, and that's why we read that as our text. But know also that we're going to be looking at Mark and Matthew today too. And the greater story of what's going on with this demoniac that had a legion of demons is that he had been part of his culture at some point in his life. Don't really know why he has a legion of demons in him now, but they did try to do something about it. Their response was, well, first we're going to try to shackle this man and put him in chains. And I don't even, you're not even really sure whether or not he was ever made a public spectacle. Maybe he was put on display. I don't know. I don't know. But he broke those chains. He got away from those chains. And the best place he could think to go was a graveyard. So this man's life had been reduced to probably living in some sort of normalcy to now he's living in a graveyard. He's living in a graveyard, and the people of his town thought enough of him to send somebody up there from time to time to feed him. But he'd also, I guess there was also a like-minded individual, if you want to call it that, who had followed him to this graveyard. Now there were two demoniacs up there. And people were honestly afraid to get around this person. He was a very scary person. He may not have even had any muscular build to him, because our strength really doesn't come from our build. As W.B. Godby said in his commentary, our strength comes really from our nerves, and you can see that in miraculous encounters where somebody wrecks in a car or something, the car's turned over. You've all seen videos like this where the car's turned over on somebody, and out of compassion and distress, a fellow human being comes and lifts the car supernaturally almost off of somebody. They're not even that strong. It's just out of this exhilaration of exhilaration and excitement in the moment. They lift that car up. So here's this person who is capable of quite a bit, and his town recognized it. While he was up there, he made a habit of taking stones and lacerating himself with these stones, and was brutally hurting himself. And then I realized that not everybody would do something like that that's in a dark place, but what comes with a mindset like this is also, it almost is always accompanied with self-harm, whether if it's physically or mentally. Sometimes our thoughts can hurt us far more than one razor blade. Furthermore, he was definitely, because of this evil that was in him, he couldn't even keep clothes on. It's so sad to think of the mental state of this person. It says in all, I believe it's in all three of the gospel accounts, that he was naked in this place. And in regards to him living in this graveyard, it's one thing to live in a graveyard, but in the bigger picture, what he was really doing is he was secluded from humanity. He was at the place where he didn't think many people would want to come visit him. He was pushing people away. Now, I don't want to take from the fact that the miracle here, okay? Today there's this move to say that, well, and I believe Thomas Jefferson may have been one of these people that believed this, but that the demonic encounters that Jesus was dealing with is what we would call today mental illness, and so therefore Jesus wasn't casting demons out of people. He was probably just healing them of depression and anxiety and things of that nature. I don't believe that. I'm not going to try to read that into the text. It very clearly says here in this text that Jesus healed this man of a legion of demons. A legion of demons. But what I do want to help us understand here is that although not everybody would have physical demons, I've only met a few of those in my Christian life, but I've met an awful lot of people that have unspiritual demons. There's a lot of people that fight and battle demons every day of their life. And in the greater context, that's what we want to look at here today. So I want to say again, I'm not taking away from the fact that Jesus cast demons out of this man. I understand that. But I also understand too, to get to the root of what's going on here, you can't always say this is a demon. You can't always say that this is a demon that would cause somebody to go this route. Now when Jesus sees a man, and I believe Jesus knows what He's doing at all times, don't you? I think Jesus, I believe wholeheartedly that Jesus purposely put Himself in the path to meet with this guy. He purposely put Himself in the path to meet with this guy. Whether or not the storm steered them in this direction or what, it doesn't matter to me. Jesus purposely set out to meet this man. Because, for one reason, not because of what He was going to do or not because of possibilities, for one reason, this man was important to God. He was important to God. He may not have been in very much importance to his society, but he was very important to God. He was a person. He bore what Paul called in 1 Corinthians 5, and what the Latin term we would use here would be the Imago Dei. Imago Dei. He bore the very image of God. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 49, Paul said, "And as we have been born of the image of the man of dust, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly man." We shall also bear the image of the heavenly man. Now, I'm not going to preach self-esteem to you up here today. That's not why God's called me to the ministry. I'm not going to preach positive thought up here for you today. That's not why God calls anybody to the ministry. What I am going to tell you, though, today is each and every one of you have been created in the very image of God. And because of that, He loves you. And it doesn't matter where you are in life. It doesn't matter if you're a sinner or a saint. It doesn't matter if you've backslidden. It really does not matter as far as God's unconditional love is always going to abound to you. Because you are bearing upon you the very image of God, which is only for human beings. Now, because He had this image of God upon Him, He also had another enemy. The enemy of our souls, Satan himself. He hates you for this reason. He hates you for the same reason God loves you. Because when he sees you, he sees everything that he hates. And so the devil has set himself out to try to put things in your way, to try to put things into your life, to try to tear you away from God, to try to destroy you, to try to steal you, kill you, and destroy you. And God knows and understands that. He understands that so much, He was willing to come down off the throne of heaven and do something about it upon a cross made out of trees in which He had created. He understood. People are important to God. All of them. Even the ones that have stolen off you. Even the drug addict on the street. Even the president you may disagree with. They are all created in the image of God. And we ought to pray for them in that way. See people the way God has seen them. And then the first thing Jesus does is diagnose this man. He diagnoses this man. He sees exactly what his problem is, and he begins to combat it. John 2:25, Scripture reads to us, He did not need any testimony about mankind, for He knew what was in each person. And you better believe God knows what is in your heart today. I had the privilege of talking to a lady yesterday, and she kept on saying over and over and over again in the state of backslidness that she was in, that God knows my heart, God knows my heart, God knows my heart. And you know what I should have said? I regret this now. What I should have said is, doesn't that scare you? Doesn't that scare you? Of course He knows what's in your heart. That's why He wants to do something about it today. That's why He wants to do something about it today. This thing that was in him was more than one thing. Gandhi said in his commentary, this could have been anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 demons within this man, and Jesus knew that. But then, when God sees a man, He sees healing that can take place. And you know how He healed him? Matthew says it best in this particular passage. 8:32. Go. Let me repeat that. Matthew 8:32. Jesus healed this man that had 10,000 demons within him, maybe. With one word. Go. Go. How exalting is that of our Lord and Savior? It makes you step back when you look at the grand scheme. I mean, here's a man, it even says in Scripture that he had been in this condition for a long time. This has become his way of life every day, picking up rocks and hurting himself, every day being fed from the scraps of his society, every day living in nakedness among the dead. Jesus' answer to that is go. Go. That's all it took. Well, that's my hope for everybody who's facing something similar to this. And I've not met anybody just yet, and I may one day, I'm sure. I've not met anybody just yet in our culture, in our church culture, or in any relational sense that had a life like this demoniac. It's never been that bad. And all it took is for Jesus to say, go. And that'd be easy. We could have an altar call right now. That would really preach itself. But let's look at this in just a deeper way. It's God's design that we see men as He sees them. Let's look at just exactly what was going on here. And we see ourselves as God sees us. Wicked societies, like this society this man lived in, they do not value human life. And when a society puts no value upon human life, it causes that society as a whole to fall into depression. We're seeing that right now in our culture. We're seeing that right now in our society. Our society has become so plagued with sin, church. It's become so plagued with sin that probably many of you sitting right here, even in a holiness church, has sinful things in your life that you became numb to that you don't even realize are bad because you have been spiritually dumbed down from holiness. You have. You have. We don't know. We don't know. Especially the group of young people in my generation and the young people behind me, and especially, oh goodness, when you talk to the 8 to 10-year-olds in our youth group class, it'll break their heart sometimes. They don't know right from wrong. They don't know right from wrong. Our culture is systematically, over the course of especially the last 100 years, devalued human life. For many people, without even knowing it, without even realizing it, are being treated much like this demoniac in our culture. The millennial generation is what they're calling, especially you guys. My generation, the Generation Xers, were much like this too, and even the baby boomers before us. And then there's those in the gap. But you know, it's this mindset that says something along the lines of this: I'm a DJ, let's get the party started. You know what I mean? You didn't think I was going to say that? I'm a DJ, let's get the party started. That's the mindset of who we are. You know what's behind those words? I need happiness. I need happiness. I need fulfillment in my life. I need something more than what the society is calling me to. When I was a sinning man, I used to go once a year. I look forward to this pilgrimage to a place down in Manchester, Tennessee called Bonnaroo. Bonnaroo is filled with about 150 of the biggest stars in music of the day. And in one of those tents in Bonnaroo was a DJ tent where literally people my age would lay high for 4 straight days listening to music. Let's get the party started. Let's get the party started. Every year, there's about 10 overdoses a day. And I used to think that was fun, because there was a God-shaped void in my life. There was this sense that I wanted to escape from humanity. There was this sense that I need to get an escape from reality. Well, I would submit to you this morning that we don't need an escape from reality. We need a reshaping of what our reality is. We need a reshaping of what our reality is. I'm a DJ. Let's get the party started. You guys may have remembered in the news last year, there was a man by the name of Avicii that passed away. Died of suicide, 28 years old. He had the whole world at his fingertips. Famous musician. On his way up, he was playing music in places like that Bonnaroo Festival I went to in front of a crowd of 100,000 people. He had it all. He was a one-man band. He didn't even have to split the income. It was just all coming to him. He committed suicide in one of the most beautiful resorts in the world. It's everything that we think about. I wish I was secure enough to have the kind of money and go stay in one of these places. This is beautiful. But in that place, this 28-year-old man committed suicide. What does that say? Suicide in our culture has reached all-time high. You realize that? According to the most recent statistics by the Center of Disease Control, 2006 to 2016, you can look at the chart, you can look at the graph and see that the suicide rate in the United States of America has grown incrementally every single year. It's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. While there were 19,362 murders in the United States, in 2016, there were 44,965 suicides. Let that set in a minute. You don't hear this being talked about. I don't know why. I'm not going to speculate as to why. It's not my job to do that. But as I'm preaching this sermon, there will be an average of 4 people commit suicide in our country. That's the things I think about. That's the things I think about. Those are the things that keep me up at night. Those are the things that cause me to turn my light back on and open up the book of Proverbs or Psalms and try to get some peace in my mind so I can go to bed. I'm thankful for the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. I'm also thankful that following Jesus comes with His burdens for the lost. In the Great Depression, historic event in our country, when our country just literally went under. If it wasn't for World War II, I wouldn't know where we would be today. But even in the Great Depression, one of the most horrible events that's ever taken place in our country, where people were just struggling to buy bread for their children, there were 40,000 suicides that year. This year, every year, there's 4 more thousand suicides in the United States. And it's climbing. And it's growing. But yet, we are supposedly at one of the capstones, we're like at the capstone of our culture. It's like we're at our prime right now. We have technology that is just mind-blowing. There's opportunities everywhere. You can go to college relatively cheap. Like more so than there's more opportunities for that. I mean, there's just opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to fulfill the American dream right now. But somehow, it's just not enough. This is the woe of a relativistic, postmodern mindset. This is the woe of that. We've got absolutely no system or foundation of truth. We've got no hope. We've got no dreams and aspirations of anything past the grave. Most of our, and you can see the sway right along with the suicide statistics, that as the suicide statistics are going up, so are the statistics for people being skeptical of Christian faith. Isn't that something? You can see, you don't have to have a sociology degree to see the correlation. The less of God we have in the culture, the more darkness each individual person is going to have on their life. What is my purpose? What is my reason for existence? That's the questions that are being asked by this age group that fills most of this church this morning. What is my purpose? What is my existence? In the Greek culture, they had these people like Plato, Aristotle, they had Epicurus, they had these philosophers that were these such great thinkers. And it was through their culture this city was created. And in that city produced a man who had more demons than anybody you ever encountered in Scripture. They had such great intellectual thought, but they left the heart seeking more. An intellectualism that divorces itself from the heart leaves people dry, leaves people unfulfilled. And in this intellectual culture, they devalue human life. I'm a DJ. I get the party started. That doesn't fulfill anything. Avicii's family said about him after he died, when he stopped touring, he wanted to find a balance in life to be happy and be able to do what he loved most. Be able to do what he loved most. Music. You know, it wasn't too long ago. It's the last time I ever saw one of my good friends alive. I walked into our local BP over here, and I just found Jesus. We had the same background. I'd been about a month sober off of an extremely bad OxyContin addiction. He had been about a month sober off of an extremely bad OxyContin addiction. We used to get high together and party together all the time. I said, I'm not mention his name, but I said, brother, I found Jesus. I think things are just going to be fine. They have been for 8 years. And he said, you found Jesus? He said, my higher power is music. And I remember the last words I said to him. I said, man, surely it's got to be higher than music. He said, no, that's what works for me. And I take that back. He said, I think the last words I said to him actually were, I'd love to talk to you more about that. I never got that opportunity because he died of a drug overdose a few weeks later. We have to choose what our God is. And there's only one that I know that will fulfill us. There's only one that I know that will fulfill us. I know what it's like to be suicidal, guys. I know exactly what that's like. If I wouldn't have gotten arrested, that would have probably been my next option. It would have been my next option. I've been contemplating suicide for about a month before I got saved. I'd gotten deeper and deeper and deeper into darkness. I've started extricating myself away from all of my friends. I didn't want to be around people. People just troubled me. Life troubled me. I had no hope. It was all darkness. And I've locked myself in my house and watched over and over and over again, just fill my life with movies, video games, and try to escape the things that were going on in my mind. Don't you think? The few times there I said, I just need to go ahead and kill myself. There's no reason to do it. I was an atheist. I was a drug addict. I was a drug dealer. So I can understand the mindset of this young man. I was 26 when I got saved. He was 28 when he took his own life. He really struggled, his family said. Thoughts about meaning, life, happiness. Imagine that. Meaning, life, happiness. He couldn't go on any longer. And then they ended with, he wanted to find peace. And I'm thankful to know Jesus Christ this morning that fulfills every single aspect of that and fulfills every part of that. That if you look at what this eulogy is plainly saying here, if you want to, and I'm not trying to be mean, or I'm not trying to be crass about this. I'm saying that if you took this eulogy and put it together, it would just be an old-fashioned Eastern Kentucky answer. This boy needed Jesus. That's what he needed. That was his answer. But in his pursuit of meaning, life, and happiness that had taken him to the top of the billboards and at the top of all of the things that people worked for in their life, very quickly he received it all and realized this does not fulfill me either. Where else can I go? Where else can I go from here? I believe many people in this generation share this man's heartbeat. I believe they do. I believe they do. And from the conversations I had yesterday on our streets right here in Jackson, Kentucky, that's exactly what people are looking for today. What's my meaning? What's my purpose? How do I find happiness? How do I get over this? We're in an age right now of infinite knowledge, but yet we don't have any answers for the basic life questions. I want to take that back. It's not that we don't have answers. People just don't want to hear them. What is your purpose? What were you designed for? I think only God can answer that. Don't you? Not I think. I know only God can answer that. Ravi Zacharias at Louisiana Governor's State Breakfast, prayer breakfast, he said this wonderful quote. Moses gave his people 630 laws. David reduced them to 15. Isaiah reduced them to 11, and Micah reduced them to 3. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly before your God. When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your mind, and all your soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all of the laws of the prophets. Paul then took that one more step by saying in Galatians 5:14, he said, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. The great and mighty sidetrack throughout church history would be that people get so focused upon God, they forget the reason of which they were created, which was to love their neighbor as yourself. I get a kick sometimes out of some of the pictures I see on the internet. They're kind of like, to me, for most people, I think they're kind of like a duh question, if I could use that word. A duh question. People will say, like, you see this beautiful, pristine, snow-capped mountain in the background with its purple rocks, obviously in the Colorado Rockies or something. Beautiful cedar pine trees all around this really beautiful wraparound porch cabin with a little campfire in the front of it, right around a brook that's going by teeming with a bunch of trout, and there's even possibly a guy standing there fly fishing or something like that, and they'll say something like this on the picture. It'll say something along the words of, could you live here for one month without any cell phone or internet or electricity or any human contact if somebody paid you $10,000? I always look at those and say, a lot of people pay $10,000 for that. I don't know why anybody. Or you'll see this beautiful beach house or something like that, same concept. But you know what that says? That says that we live in a culture, and of course everybody shares those things around. Yeah, of course. But we live in a culture that's looking for an escape. We're living in a culture that's looking for an escape. We live in a culture that's produced many people, kind of like this demoniac in so many ways, that they just want to get away from humanity, even if it's a graveyard. They just want to get away from humanity. And what that's done is that is Satan's ultimate ploy to try to whittle you down, whittle you down, whittle you down, to where you think, not that you really are, but where you think you are a lone wolf trying to just get through life by yourself doing things your own. Well, I'm going to tell you something. You always need another person. And you cannot escape that. And the moment that you do escape that, that is when real darkness sets in. Now this is just a mindset really. Because to say that you can live without another human being on this earth, you're fooling yourself. Because even the car that you came to church in this morning was built by another human being. The building we're sitting in was built by another human being. These walls were built by 2 different mission teams that came down here. This carpet was laid by Pastor David and some other people in here. Your groceries. If it wasn't for human beings working together, there would be no such thing as a grocery store. Because who's picking the fruit that you're buying? You ain't picking it. I know that. Who printed the money that you're using to buy that fruit? We live in a society where we live off of one another. We live off one another. Think of it in those regards. Go ahead. Try to seclude yourself from everybody. See how long you last. Reminded of that movie that Tom Hanks made a few years ago called Castaway. Anybody ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
What happened to him when he got on that secluded island of paradise by himself? It wasn't too long before he found a volleyball and drew a face on it and began having conversations with it because he was hungry and thirsty for human interaction. And I would submit to you that's what happens to anybody. That being said, the problem is not the people that are around you. The problem is not your culture. The problem is internal. When the internal problem gets set right, then the culture around you all of a sudden changes. I used to hate Jackson, Kentucky when I was in the I didn't ever want to come down here. There's just something about it. I just didn't like it. Now I love it. I absolutely love this thing. I love it. I want to see it do better. I want to see it grow. I want to see something happen here. I do. What changed? I'll tell you this, it wasn't Jackson, Kentucky. It ain't changed in 50 years, I don't think. I guess it was by alcohol. But other than that, but it doesn't change my love for this place. All of a sudden, I love culture. I love being around people. I spent so long before that being around people. I think I drive my poor wife crazy. We always got people over their house. We're always got talking to people. I love people. What changed? I changed. I changed. If you're looking for meaning and purpose, you can find it in God's Word. I thought this was kind of harsh when I first read it, the way this was worded here in chapter 8 of Luke. Whenever this demoniac was healed, listen to his interaction with Jesus. He said, Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away. I mean, the first time I read that, I was like this guy is healed, and all of a sudden he wants to be around people. What better person to be around than Jesus Christ? But Jesus sent him away. Why did he do that? Well, I think it was the wisdom of God. First of all, this man was a Gentile. The places that Jesus was going to minister to, he wouldn't be accepted. He wouldn't be accepted. He would have faced a lot of the same things he faced in his own culture. I think that's the primary reason why Jesus sent him away. That's not the primary reason, though. I think the primary reason Jesus sent him away is because he had something better for him to do. He had something better for him to do. Jesus said to him, Return to your own house and tell what great things God has done for you. And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. That city was not ready to accept Jesus. That city, whenever Jesus destroyed their hog company and cast these demons into a pig farm, they all run over the cliff. And they're like, let's get this guy out of here. They weren't ready to accept Jesus. But one thing they could not deny was Jesus set that demoniac free. Well, this that guy that was over here in the chains in the middle of the city not too long ago? This is the guy that broke through the chains, been living by the graveyards. Yeah, I know, we've been waiting to bury Grandma Betty, but we're afraid to go up there because the dude's crazy. It's that guy, isn't it? What's this Jesus thing? He's the one that cast 10,000 demons out of him and put them in the pigs. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. Many people in our culture, guys, are like that too. They won't accept Jesus outright. But they can't deny testimony. They can't deny testimony. This man had a purpose. And see, until we understand that our purpose has to be God-given in our life, we're going to continue to live a life without any purpose. That's the biggest problem in our society today. We push God out of schools, we push God out of families, we push God out. Today, kids are growing up saying, what's my purpose? What's my meaning? By a word from Jesus. It goes without saying, man's greatest need is being cast, and having the darkness cast out of it. We've all needed that. The second greatest need is in each other. He went back, started a life within his community once again. We need each other. I need you. You need me. If you guys weren't here this morning, I'd be preaching to fabric pews. I need you. I do. I need my wife. I need my mother-in-law. I need my assistant pastor, his wife. They drive buses for this church. They do things for this church. They have G were tirelessly putting the lettering on our door yesterday morning, probably about 8 o'clock or something. They were out there doing things like that. This church needs people in order for it to function. It's designed that way. It's not just churches, but our culture is designed that way. It's not something we need to be ashamed of. It's not a hellfire and brimstone message, is it? It's a simple message. It's a message that hits us right at home. God takes the darkness out of us and then puts us into a community. And we find our purpose. We find our purpose. Now, what is your purpose? I don't know. But I'll tell you what it's going to look like. Loving your neighbor as yourself. It's going to have something to do with that. However that fits into your life, it's loving your neighbor as yourself. Now, there are times when we need to get alone with Jesus and sit and meditate on His Word, and it's good to be alone. But remember, you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. And if any of us actually sat and thought for a few minutes about your walk with Jesus, you will see very plainly that you wouldn't be where you were today if it was not for other people. If it was not for other people. Jesus healed the demoniac. What a miracle. 10,000 dark spirits being cast out of somebody and put into a herd of pigs and thrown over the side of the cliff. Now, as I started this sermon, I'm going to end it this way too. Sometimes people's demons are not from hell. Their demons are that they're living in hell already right now. Their demons are emotional distress. Their demons are depression, or heaviness, or loneliness. And just with a word, God can get that out of your life this morning. It starts you anew, starts you afresh. Just a word. It happened in an instant. It didn't take time. It didn't take medication. It didn't take years of counseling. It happened in a moment. Jesus said, go. Jesus said, go. I thought it'd be a fitting hymn to end this with kind of a newer song. He touched me. 3:40. Have faith this morning. God can touch you. He can heal you. He loves you. He wants